Ich hoffe, die Workshops waren ertragreich und Essen sowie Gespräche dazu waren lecker. Wir machen jetzt hier weiter mit dem inhaltlichen Programm und dafür werde ich jetzt ins Englische wechseln. Because our guest arrived all the way from India, where he's shaping the future of education as Director of School Development in Bhatia city in Bangalore. You might have heard from him a little bit closer because he was also the founding principal of the Örestad Gymnasium in Copenhagen, a high school with a focus in media, communications and culture, which is known for open learning spaces and vast arrays of technologies to use with many teaching methods. Only one of them is the classical way, and up to 25% can be virtual. And from all those experiences he made, he develops a vision for a school that can stay relevant in our times, the digital school. Welcome, Allan Kjaer Andersen.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this conference. I do understand German, so watch out. I can also speak a little German, but I prefer presenting in English. What you see here is a picture of 3 tapestries that are hanging on the walls of Örestad Gymnasium in Copenhagen. And what has that to do with a digital school or a digital world? I won't answer that now, but I'll end up doing it. But 2 years ago, we contacted the State Foundation for Art in Denmark and asked them for a digital piece of artwork for our school. And great was our surprise when the artist Amalie Schmidt came up with these 3 tapestries. Enough right now about that. Maybe I should have called my presentation today "The School in the Digital World," because that's really what I'll be talking about. And I'll take some examples from my time at Örestad Gymnasium and some of the thoughts I have made for the new school I'm developing in Bangalore. Örestad Gymnasium in Copenhagen is known for its open learning spaces and the use of technology. And I think what's special about the experience of the school is the combination of modernization of learning spaces and the use of technology. We were a one-to-one school right from the start in 2005. Every student had their own device and had access to it all the time. That was not so many schools that had that in 2005. And in 2012, we took the big leap to become 100% digital when it comes to learning materials. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about why we did it and how we did it. The school in Bangalore will be inspired from the experiences from Örestad. It's a good example of the modern globalized world because I was actually headhunted by a headhunting company in Mumbai called Hunt to become the leader of a school development project in Bangalore. They wanted to make a school with open learning spaces and with use of technology, and the last thing is very relevant for Bangalore because Bangalore maybe is the biggest IT center of the world when it comes to people that are engaged in IT. So that's what I'm working on now, and we are opening in 2020, so I have some time now to think about what should school be like in a modern world. Because now I have the responsibility of being the actual leader of a school with teachers and students and daily problems. I will start with what I will call the Facebook shock. You maybe know that in the start of the 60s, end of 50s, we had the Sputnik shock, the shock to the educational world that the Russians actually could make rockets. The Facebook shock is about that what started as a naive and idealistic project to share information and have openness between people ended up with the Cambridge Analytics scandal. And Google are no better. Their business is not, they say, don't be evil, but their business is to make the users the product so they can earn money on that. So now we're in a situation where we have a discussion in schools about what can we do in a situation where we have the social media and we have the strong big companies that decide on our privacy, and we have new ways of interacting with each other. You can see the pictures of the children here sitting with their necks bowed and looking into their iPads and their iPhones. So what is the answer for schools for that situation? We are having a discussion about that in Denmark and all over the world. And in France, they have decided not to have mobile phones at all in the schools. But we have also had what I would call the iPad challenge to schools, because with the iPads and brand new and computers in a broader sense, a wide new range of opportunities for innovation of pedagogy became clear. But on the other hand, some people loved their paper books and said it's a much better reading device than the digital device. So maybe we should close the doors for the digital media and focus on what she once called to be different in a good way. So we have in the discussion in Denmark people that are dreaming of having an analog monastery where we can focus on reading books in the good old manner. To some extent, that reaction is very understandable, because there are many dangerous things with the digital media. It influences our concentration span, it disturbs what we are doing, it changes the way we interact. So it's understandable to dream about a time where everything was different and some would think better. But I think that we need to dig somewhat deeper to answer what should schools do with a world that is digital. And therefore, I think it's very fundamental questions to put right now to schools. Why do we need schools? I mean, Zuckerberg didn't finish university. Steve Jobs didn't finish university. Indian kids can learn just by being shown a computer. So is school really a relevant setup in the modern digital society? And I think there are three interconnected reasons why schools are relevant. And they become more and more relevant. The first is, and in Denmark we often discuss it as a question of, is the most important the one or the other or the third thing? But I think they are equally important, they are interdependent, so we can only have schools that are relevant for modern people if we can do these three things I mentioned here. The first is to support personal development of character and identity. It's clear from many studies in Denmark that even though we are number 3 in the world, we used to be number 1 in happiness. even though we are that, we can see that many young people have depressions, they feel stressed. So it's very difficult to build identity and character in the modern world where we have access to so much entertainment and so many informations, and where we want to be just as perfect as the people we can see on the social media. So, and we also have a situation where the role of the parents has changed. So I think to help building character and identity is more important than ever for schools. The second thing is to prepare for the work life, to give competences that make young people employable in the modern world. And if you say that aloud, there's thousands of pedagogues in Denmark saying, our job is not to prepare for the work life. But I say, of course it is. It's one of the obligations of school. It's not more important than the other, but it's there, and it's important for young people to get an education and be prepared for work life. In India, it's life and death. If you don't have top marks from schools, you can't go to the best universities. So they know that it's important. But the third thing becomes even more relevant, and that is the education to citizenship. We heard a little about it this morning, about the danger of the erosion of our democracy. And I think it starts in school. The good old saying in US and in England too, of the common good is more important than ever. To educate young people that really cares about other things than themselves, cares about what's in the interest of the collective, of the community, and that's what I call the common good. So the thing is right now that these three dimensions are the important dimensions for why we still need school. But the next thing is they are interdependent. So you can't prepare for work life without creating people with character and identity. Also, companies need people that care for each other, that have empathy, that have citizenship. A modern company can't say that they are not interested in being sustainable. It's something that all companies need to be. So my point is, we need to do all these three things, and they are not antagonistic, they are interdependent. And the next thing, they all have an important digital component. Digitalization changes the way we need to work with personal development, with citizenship, and with preparation for work life. And this is not a complete list, and you can't read it anyway. But what's important for me is to say that in the modern world, when we want to support the development of character and identity, we don't have any children without a digital gadget. That's part of the way they create their identity. And if we don't take that into consideration, it will have a negative influence on if they can establish character and resilience at all. So exclusion of the digital media is a way not to do that, and not to do what schools are supposed to do. So for me, you can only do the traditional core obligations of the school if you integrate the digital component. Modern citizenship is also changing because of digital media. We have a discussion about fake news, about how can we understand the world, a world that is medialized, where everything is presented in media. How can we be citizenship if we can't access the services of the companies and the public world that are being more and more digital? And how can we have active, participative democracy if the citizens can't use digital media for communication and sharing? And the same thing goes, of course, and that's more obvious, for preparation for the work life, because you need to be able to code and to understand what computers are like, and you need to be able to learn online, you need to be able to collaborate. But even in companies, you need to have so much knowledge about computers and so many personal and social competences and innovative competences, then you can not only use computers and the technology at hand, but that you can be part of developing new solutions. So for me, the point is that digitalization of school is not a little thing you can do in a computer lab or by having a one-to-one iPad solution. It's part of every activity of the school that must be reflected. And I was totally in agreement what we heard this morning about that it has everything that we do with computers must have an ethical aspect, but not only an ethical, also a citizenship aspect. So there's no subject in school, no activity in school where you can leave digitalization out. So it's not something for special teachers in coding, it's something that must be reflected in everything we do in school, both in the content and in the pedagogy. And I think it's so important to say this because it's not reflected in very many countries' discussions about the future of education. You discuss in most countries why do we lag after Finland in the PISA surveys, or should we have a little more hours in German and a little fewer hours in mathematics or vice versa. But the fundamental questions about how do we prepare young people for a digitalized world plays a very little role. In Denmark, we have now had compulsory coding in the elementary school, but that's completely new, and it's only a technical course. It's not integrated with the whole activity. And therefore, the digitalization is left to progressive teachers that make amazing things, but that have difficulties in changing the system. The digitalization, of course, is part of other background for school development that also tells us to change how schools function. I'll not go through them all, but you know them, most importantly, of course, climate change. But what's important for me is to say that all these areas outside the school makes it important for schools to innovate in all these aspects that I have given a picture of here. But today, the most important subject is IT and technology in school, so I won't go through them all. Now I've talked about the three fundamental objectives of school, but there's also two other reasons for integrating technology in school development. And the first is the pedagogy. We have discussed progressive pedagogics for 50 years now, and something has happened. When I look at some Indian school, I can see a lot has happened in Europe. But the point is that with the use of technology, it becomes possible to change teaching without losing control. It is now possible to have more personalized learning, where students learn in their own tempo and with challenges that are right for them. It is possible to work more problem-oriented without having sessions with loose group work, without concrete things to do for the students, and so on. It is possible to integrate design thinking and innovation in teaching because of technology. So I think that technology gives us tools to do what we have known for years is the right thing to do, to make students work more and the teachers talk less. To make students work with real-life problems that they can engage in and not only in subjects defined by textbooks. And textbooks often is a hindrance for relating to the outside world. I think that the most important things for schools today is to see how much can we integrate the 17 global sustainability goals in our curriculum. So technology makes it possible to work with these problems, to work without textbooks, because students can find their materials, can work with them in school if they have the digital gadgets. So at Örestad, we used the technology not because it was smart and modern, but because it linked up to the pedagogy that we wanted. So we wanted to create a school where the student was producers and learned while they produced materials from problems they had solved. And I'll say that this pedagogy would not be possible without technology. It would not have been possible to have an open school with open learning spaces without technology as management tool for teachers. Oh, that was the wrong way. Yeah, I have a short movie, but 2 minutes just to show you how Örestad works. Maybe, should I leave it out? Now I do it.
My name is Anders Hessing. I'm 35 years old and I'm a teacher at Örestad Gymnasium.
My name is Cecilia. I'm 17 years old and I'm a student at Örestad Gymnasium. I travel these stairs probably about 6 or 8 times a day.
The building is one giant transparent room where everybody can see what everybody's doing. We consider it a way of inspiring each other.
The stairs combines the room and you meet your friends on the stairs every time you have your pastime. And if you fall on these stairs, everyone stops and claps.
The general idea behind the architecture is to create learning environments that challenge traditional ways of teaching and studying. In this area, for example, there is no teacher preaching at the blackboard because there is no blackboard. So how do you teach without the blackboard? Well, part of the solution is digital media. As a teacher at Örestad, I've already presented and prepared the entire learning process online. Without the blackboard, I'm free to help the students and act as a coach and consultant in the teaching situation.
A very common thing to do is just to stand here and relaxing, thinking about nothing, just stop the brain from thinking and just watch the whole school, just maybe point out a hot guy or something like that. The hardest part about going to gymnasium is the part where you grow up. It's the part where you have to take responsibility. It's a pretty big deal when you start going to gymnasium. Everything is about your future.
They start up as children and they're kind of grown up when they leave again. So it's a very important period in their life.
As I mentioned, in 2012 we decided to become 100% digital, and I will just, as the last thing in this presentation, tell a little bit about that. We did it through what we call the professional learning communities of the subject groups of teachers. So every subject group had the task to develop digital teaching materials that matched the pedagogy of the school. And it was a combination of free materials from the internet, licensed material, ebooks and so on, produced by Danish publishers, and materials produced by the teachers themselves. And the teachers were guaranteed for that it wasn't something strange coming from the leadership team, it was something that they had developed themselves and matched the activities they wanted their students to be engaged in. In the first phase, it was mostly PDF variations of books or materials from the internet. But in the next phase, they made more interactive materials and there were some Danish publishers experimenting with adaptive learning materials, and the teachers also tried to use that. Teacher training was an important component, but it was teacher training done by good colleagues. So it was not external persons, it was persons they knew and could talk to in breaks and in afternoons and so on. And then we found out that student training was very important. We thought that they were born digital, so they knew everything about digital gadgets, but they didn't. They knew it as social media and communication and entertainment gadgets, but not as learning tools. So we implemented an introduction program to the learning tools that we use in the school. And it's really strange, but I have never heard a teacher complain about this strategy. Because we did it in that way, it was their materials. They didn't see it as something an enemy had dreamt of. Maybe they will now, because the new leadership team in the school has decided that now 20%, because of budget cuts, 20% of the teaching must be online courses. And that's something new. And that's because we have 2% budget cuts in Denmark every year in schools, so now it really hurts. But what we could see is that it is possible to digitalize teaching, and it's possible to do it without destroying the interaction between teachers and students. And it's possible to start reflecting on how students use the digital media when they are not in school, or when they are in school and not supposed to do it. And then I'll go back to the tapestry. I could have talked all day. Yeah, here it was. There they are hanging. The tapestry here is Amalie Smith's warning to the schools, because she says that if you don't control the algorithms, you will be controlled by the algorithms. These 3 tapestries were made in the following way. She took pictures of the gadgets that all the students used in school. She took pictures of flowers from nearby nature that was threatened by city development. And she put the pictures into a neural machine that Google has made called Deep Dream. And it created these patterns. And then they were sent to a weaving company in Belgium, but everything before that was done digitally. So it was a combination of human creativity and knowledge of algorithms that produced these artworks. So this combination of humanistic creativity and knowledge of machines, of algorithms, was her warning to school. She said in her presentation of the artwork, you need to be good at doing that. And she's both an artist with words and with pictures. And she called the 3 tapestries machine learning. But it's not really only machine learning. It's machine learning guided by an artist. So in that way, we can combine being digital without losing our age-old obligation as schools preparing for life. Thank you.